Welcome back to Hoops Lounge. We're the show with more late game minutes than Andre Drummond. My name is Marc Griffin, aka Montreal Mark. I'm joined by Phil Boileau, Sporting Phil, Justin Rowan, Cavs Canada. Yes, he's not getting many minutes. We're going to talk a bevy of basketball here today on the show. We'll start with a little preview of two teams that I've been talking about for quite a while now. San Antonio Spurs, Golden State Warriors are facing off in a historic late season matchup this coming Sunday. Everyone knows about, the home record versus the 73, all this stuff. But we want to look at these two teams in general. They're probably going to meet later on, probably in May. So let's just get cooking. Justin, I'm going to throw a really hard question at you. I want your honest opinion. Beyond what he's been saying publicly, do you think Gregg Popovich cares at all about these records?
I think some part of him cares about the record. I think what he cares about more than anything is trying to find out little things about the Warriors that he can use in the playoff series. I don't think he's going to go out of his way 100% to really make that undefeated record happen at home. Although there's a part of me that thinks he really does care about this, because when you look back at how he coached the All-Star game, a meaningless game, Paul George was creeping up on that points records, and he's throwing triple teams at him. So Popovich is always a bit of a wild card, and it wouldn't really surprise me if he came out with a more aggressive game plan and kind of show his hand for playoffs a little more than we would expect.
Yeah, that was Wilt Chamberlain's record that Bush was going for, by the way. Phil, the other side of the coin, Steve Kerr has quite a dilemma. I mean, they've pretty much got the one wrapped up. He's got guys he wants to rest, but he's got this historic thing. He's got this Michael Jordan thing, his ex-teammate that the guys are gunning for. What would you do if you're Steve?
Look, I think they have so much depth that they have the ability to rest some guys while still being in contention for that. I mean, they've shown even without all their guys being playing at a high level that they can win games over some of the top teams. I mean, they can also lose with their stars against some of the bottom teams. But I can see him limiting minutes and kind of seeing how it flows. But I think he has complete confidence in guys like Sean Livingston, guys like Andre Iguodala at the ball handle. I can see. I mean, I don't know if he has to. I think he wants to rest, but at the same point, I really think that this would be one of those things that propels you into the playoffs. Like, obviously, actually, is it so obvious? Is the second ring more important than the record? And I'm thinking about this now, and I'm not actually sure the answer, because a second ring, 2 titles in a row is really hard to do. Not tons of teams do that, and it would be, the starting something really special. This team seems to be sticking together. Mm-hmm. But would it be more than that? I don't know. I'm not sure about that question.
I think the ring is way more important than the 73 wins. Because if you get the 73 wins and you don't get the championship, you're like the 16-0 Patriots that lost against the Giants.
I was just thinking of those guys. So sad.
And you know what? Like, I think he can rest, because we're talking about 3 games left in the season. 1 matters against the Spurs. The other 2 is against the Memphis Grizzlies, who have nobody left.
And I wouldn't want to play Steph Curry against Memphis, or show on the Grizzlies. I wouldn't want to risk that injury.
Well, you could play him like 2 quarters, and you just nurse that 40-point lead, because there is nothing left of that Memphis team.
Yeah.
Let's look deeper at the rosters of these two teams. One guy we talked about early in the season, I call him the prototype for Draymond Green. It's Boris Diaw. He missed the last game. The game before where they played, he was crucial, integral in the Spurs winning that performance. Phil, what does Boris mean to Spurs in a whole?
I think he can mean a lot of things, but I think he epitomizes the team, how passing is kind of the first needed skill, and also he's a great plug and play. I mean, he's kind of underrated in a lot of things that he does, and I think he's one of those players that, had he kept his weight under wraps longer, I think in different systems he could have been touted as a bit bigger of a star. I think he's a really unsung hero on that team, and a legit big. I mean, they've got a lot of nice bigs this year in Aldridge, Duncan, West, but he's one of those guys. I mean, we've seen him back. Remember in his Phoenix days, he was able to play some center, power forward there, really play strong. I mean, he is a playoff performer, And there's a lot to be said about having stars on teams, but there's a lot to be said about guys who step up in those crucial situations. And I think that's what he brings more than anything. That little offensive tip, that outlet pass. I don't think he's the guy who's ever going to, surprise you with a stat line, but he makes the right plays, and he's a pure Popovich guy that way.
Yeah, I find I like to call him the barometer on that team. I find that when he plays well, it generally means you're knowing the rest of the guys are playing well too. Justin, looking back to Golden State, Draymond, his predecessor, his protege, more or less, he's changing the way the modern game is played by being very physical and very vocal these days. Do you think that trend's going to grow?
Do I think the trend's going to grow? I don't know about that. There always seems to be somebody in every era that brings that. I mean, you can look at Rasheed Wallace. You can look at the personality that was Dennis Rodman before.
Or Kevin Garnett.
Draymond Green's kind of like the remix version of Dennis Rodman with a little bit of Boris Diaw. He brings so much to the table. He's a really unique player. I think it's something that they might need to monitor. Because like Boris Diaw is the kind of barometer for the Spurs, Draymond Green, he really sets the tone for that Warriors team, at least when it comes to their aggressiveness, kind of their cocky attitude. And as Steve Kerr said after the loss against Minnesota, he really feels like the team's getting a little too cocky at times. They play sloppy with the confidence that they can pull it out at the end because they've done it all season. But that's not exactly the best habits to have going into the playoffs. So I think if Draymond Green can keep that intensity but keep some composure as well, I think that's going to make a big difference for the Warriors.
Phil, I'm going to throw the last question to you, and it's a guy we haven't mentioned yet. I've been watching a lot of the Spurs broadcasts this season, and Sean Elliott has been really on point with a lot he's been saying about Kawhi Leonard. And one thing that's really stayed with me is he said Kawhi needs to be more selfish. What do you think about that?
Well, I think if you're brought up into the system the way Kawhi was, it's hard to be selfish. I mean, you're brought in a place where he really had to prove himself. I think 14th, 15th pick overall. He was between positions. He didn't seem to have a jump shot. He had to prove all this. Then brought into a Spurs system full of veterans where he definitely wasn't the guy. I mean, he hasn't had to been the guy since college, and it's been a while. And I think while he trusts his talent in his game, it's going to be that crucial point of pulling away, saying this is now my team. And I think while talent-wise he's there, I don't know if he's ready mentally, and I don't even know if that's good for the team. Like I think he can. I think that's the secret sauce of the Spurs. I think any guy on that team or a whole bunch of them can take over and have great games, but none of them have to. And that's what makes them so incredibly tough to guard against. You'll have Patty Mills drop 20 one day. You'll have LaMarcus Aldridge. You'll have Duncan. You'll have Manu show up. Like this whole team we were talking about, Boris Diaw, just guys who can not perform for a bunch of games. He does because he's consistent with his defense and his shooting, but I don't think he has to do that in the way that some superstars do for their teams. I mean, if Paul George doesn't drop 20-something a game, they're losing. But if Kawhi doesn't, they can still win.